Hi, this is Misha, and we're back with another episode of Versus. This one might be a little interesting. At least I have one gun here that's not as well known. We are comparing the Nazi German K43, K43 self-loading rifle, an 8mm Mauser, to the French MAS MLE 1944 self-loading rifle in 7.5 French. Now, this is an interesting comparison because of when these went into service. Now, both of these are actually dated 1945, and we have histories on both, but just to kind of briefly recap as we do, France was actually a very early pioneer in self-loading infantry rifles. They were working on them as early as 1900. They actually had the RSC 1917 in World War I, which they made over 80,000, so not a small number. After World War I, they kind of slowed down, but there were prototypes in the late 20s, and this is where they went to the direct impingement gas system, and this is a true direct impingement. Later, they would also do the tipping bolt, and they would go to the 7.5 cartridge. And when they adopted the MAS-36 bolt action, the idea was to always use a self-loading rifle, making the MAS-36 kind of a second line, and yeah, using this. Well, they had a prototype ready, the MAS-38, and then they even had a production model, the MAS-40, ready to go, but Germans. So none of the MAS-40s made it to the front line, and that would look the same as this rifle here, with the one difference being the MAS-40 had a fixed 10-round mag, so it could be topped off with clips. When they went to the 44, they went to the detaching mag. Now they would use the same stock set as the 36. They would also use the same integrated spike bayonet up here as the 36, and the end cap and so on. So they really did use quite a few parts from the MAS-36. Now Germany, on the other hand, was really late to the semi-auto game. They did not really look into it much until the 1930s, and were slow to adopt it. Really, it was only after the invasion of Russia, where they saw the SVT Tokarev, that they decided to go to it. First, they tried the G41W, which was the predecessor to this. The 41 was not terribly successful because it used the bang system, a gas trap system. So they went to the 43 here, which they borrowed the gas piston. It's a short stroke piston from the SVT, and this uses a unique flapper bolt. And it also has the detaching 10-round mag like the 44, and interestingly, the 41 used a fixed 10-round mag, much like the MAS-40. Length and weight-wise, these guns are real comparable. This one's a little bulkier. We are at about 9.5 pounds. We have a 21.5-inch barrel, and we are about 44 inches compared to the MAS, which with the bayonet and mag is about 10 pounds, so a little bit heavier, not by much though, but it's slimmer. And we do have a longer barrel. We have a 23-inch barrel, and we're still also at about 44 inches. So, you know, a little bit heavier on this longer barrel though. Germany would make just over 400,000 G43, K43s during World War II, with the last ones coming out at the end of the war. Whereas France, as I said, they couldn't get the 40 into production, but as soon as they were liberated in 1944, they immediately went back, started making the MAS-44, and these would go into production in 45. Now, they would only make about 6,500 of these for the French Navy. However, this directly led to the MAS-49, which they would make about 21,000 of, and finally the MAS-40 carbine, which they would make about 275,000 of. So they would make about 300,000 of these all told, and they would remain standard service issue really until being replaced by the FAMAS in the 1980s. So a nice history there. They would also have some contracts abroad. Germany, though, this would only remain in limited service after World War II in West and East Germany as police type guns. There were some attempts to copy it, but it never really went anywhere, and that was it. This is pretty much a dead-end design. Alright, the truth is, this is pretty much a one-sided thing. The MAS is a better gun. It really is. It's strange that even though the Germans invaded France, they weren't ever really interested in their self-loading system. Instead, they went on their own tangent. I guess it was disdain for the French, but they should have looked at this because this is a better gun. The direct impingement system is simple, reliable. The bolt is big and beefy, sturdy. These detaching mags, although they're a little funny with the mag catch, are very solid. The receivers are very sturdy. The stock sets are sturdy. Ergonomics are fine. We have that onboard bayonet. We have perfectly serviceable sights. We have a peep back here on the dust cover, which is pretty stable. And we have a protected front. Comparing that to the German, well, the gas piston system in this gun is very good, because it was copied from the SVT, but the flapper system in the bolt here is kind of strange, and it leads to some potential points of failure. And their receivers, because of the way they were manufacturing them, they were forging them during wartime, these guns were overgassed to make them reliable, so that could lead to cracking in the back of the receiver when fired quite a bit. Walther would work, and this is a late Walther, so they did tinker with the gas ports a bit and try to, get the gas down, but they never completely got there. We don't have a way to mount a bayonet, which frankly is not a big deal. We have a protected front post sight, but then we have a traditional ladder sight here on the rear of the barrel. Interestingly, we have reciprocating cocking handles on both, but this is a much more, German design. It's more finicky, more parts, that kind of thing. Now, they just had scope rails as standard on these. Most of the G43, K43s would have scope rails. Not all, but most. And it does have a trap in the buttstock for spare parts like extractors, which is good because you're probably going to break them. The mags were fine. They're more of a rock and lock style versus the straight end of the MAS. Both have bolt hold opens. Both have decent triggers. This one's lighter but mushier, whereas this one is heavier but honestly nicer. This has a nice safety here, at least it's adequate. You just flip it forward and it lets you know right away if it's there. It's fine, it's usable, it's sturdy. The safety on the K43 though is Mauser style, wing style here, and it's only held in by a clip, little spring clip. So that clip breaks. I've seen it personally at least 3 times and heard of it more than that. So the safety is just not as dependable on this gun. Both are hammer fired, by the way. So yeah, it's a shame, not that it would have changed the war, but France was far ahead of Germany in my opinion when it comes to self-loading rifles. And that's why this gun, at least in slightly updated form, and I do mean slightly, if you compare a MAS-44 to a 49 or even a 49-56, they didn't make many changes because the underlying design is very solid, very good. So yeah, it was a good gun for France, and that's why they used it later on. It's not terribly well known today. As far as cartridges, 8mm Mauser versus 7.5 French. about the same. 7.5 French is maybe a little less recoiling because it's a slightly modern cartridge, but you know, they're close enough that it doesn't really matter. So yeah, in this episode of Versus for World War II guns, I'm going to have to give it to France. Even though this never went into production before or during the invasion, it's amazing they got them into production so quickly after liberation. And they did use these 1946 and so on. So that's the thing. Now I do really like the K43, but I have to admit it shows that Germany wasn't making self-loading rifles a priority. And the idea was to make this a replacement for the K98, which is funny because they also had the MP43, MP44, but they kind of always treated it as a secondary gun, a machine gun, a submachine gun. This was supposed to be the standard infantry gun, even though we know today the MP44 would have been a much, much better choice. So yeah, I'm going to have to give it to the French gun pretty much all around, with the one caveat that it wasn't really in production for World War II towards the very end. But everything else, they just did a better job, guys. I don't know how else to put it. Well, if you haven't, please do check out other episodes of Versus. And if you are interested more in the history of these guns, we have videos on that as well. Just check on the playlist. If you liked the video, please click like, and if you could, do please subscribe and share. And if you'd really like to help support the channel, click on the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and we will catch you next time.